Hello again, friends. Well, this is the Pacific Northwest. Yesterday it was sunny, today it's raining. And so I figured it was still a perfect time to make a video. I made a video just a moment ago, which was about globalization, and I never quite got to finish the video because I ended on somewhat of a note of talking about how stupid Americans are, but I never got to finish the thought, and that's okay. I'll leave it at that. I think we all can agree that Americans are pretty stupid. But it's not just Americans, was my point. I also figured that what happened and what interrupted my video was I could see someone coming up to the front door. My wife told me that they'd be here within the 45 minutes or something. Of course, it was half as long. I thought, I can make a quick video, but I didn't get away with it. This guy that was coming to the door was coming to get art bottles and cans. And so I'm going to tell you the story of what's going on with this. My wife and I live in Washington State. This video is a lot about recycling, and I'll get to that. It's a smaller part of it, I guess. Basically, if I told you your recycling was going to the dump, would that change the way that you recycle? In Washington, we don't have a deposit or a refund for bottles and cans. Now, for a lot of you out in the U.S., that's totally normal. I mean, most of you don't have bottle refunds. I lived in Oregon all my life, and when I was younger, if you wanted to get some extra money, you could collect bottles and cans, take them back to the store. In other states, there are a lot of people, like homeless people, that collect cans and take them to the recycling center to get paid by weight. But in Oregon, it was 5 cents per can. And I think in Michigan, I believe it was 10 cents per can. And we'd always say, it'd be great if we could drive our cans out to Michigan. It was always this kind of joke, because when you're young, 5 cents a can, I can't help it. Every time I say that, I wrote a song about my Astro van when I was like 15 years ago, I think. And it was a total sarcastic song, but I had this line that said, 5 cents a can goes a long way, man, when you spend a lot of time down at Wonderland. And Wonderland is the place where you go play video games for 5 cents. Nickel arcades, and I don't know if those are nationwide or not, but anyhow. Now, 5 cents a can is a lot of money when you're a kid. You could take back one bag of cans and you're good to go. Well, they recently raised the refund to 10 cents. Now, I moved out here to Washington about 15 years ago with my wife and kids. My wife and kid at the time, and now we've got kids. But Washington does not have a refund for cans. You can take them to the recycling center, and you can put them in the bins, the recycling bins, but when we moved here, they didn't have those recycling bins. Those are new. For a lot of you, like anybody from the millennial age group down and younger, you probably have always recycled, or at least to an extent, depending on where you live, but it's a very, pretty standard procedure. You've got your recycling bin and your garbage bin. Still to this day, a lot of neighbors just throw their cans away. I see it all the time. They throw it right in the garbage. Bottles, cans, it doesn't matter, in the garbage. The two things that can still be recycled and utilized are metals and glass. And glass is a phenomenal way to package materials. And the whole bottling industry, they moved to cans. Their move to, to plastic bottles from glass bottles was, one of the worst decisions they ever made for, environmental-wise, but I won't get into that here. I wanted to say that, of course, there's a lot of corruption out there in the industry and in the corporations, which are well aware that they could be more environmentally friendly by using glass, but as it's more weight to ship, it's logistical, people say, well, let's go to plastic. So here we are with plastic soda bottles, right? In Oregon, they have 10 cents. Here we get nothing. So we've been saving our bottles up to find somebody who lives in Oregon, one of our friends, that we could have them take back for us. And we just never got around to it. And I don't know how many bottles were there, but it was, say, 10 or 12 bags, full garbage bags, like black bags, big ones, 30-gallon or so, full of cans. And somebody called and said, most of them were bottles, so they're heavy. So anyway, there's people on Craigslist from Oregon who will buy the cans from people in Washington. And there are people who will drive up and go to our recycling bins and pick them up to take them back for the refund, and I don't blame them. But if you're from Washington, you can't do it. If you take a big load of cans down to Oregon, they actually will card you. You can actually get busted. They look for Washington license plates, and you'll get ticketed for going back and trying to return cans. Which I can see why, if you're not buying them in Oregon, you're not paying the deposit, so you're kind of cheating the system. But that for Oregonians, that's a great thing, because they just go up and buy them. So this guy online, my wife found on Craigslist, said he wanted to buy the cans. And he said he'd give 5 cents per can, right? And like, that's fair enough. He splits the difference. He just showed up after the last video. I had to turn it off to go meet him. I went out and helped him bottle them all up, put them in his car, in his minivan, just packed it to the ceiling. And afterwards, he's like, the guy was so soft-spoken, he didn't say anything. He was just like the quietest dude. And he's like, so what do you want? And I was like, I don't know, you talked to my wife. I don't know what you guys agreed on, but I said, I think you said something like 5 cents per can. He goes, yeah. And I hadn't counted them, so I was like, I knew that there was at least $100 worth there. And so I said, how about $20? I don't care. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. The guy looked like he needed it more than me. And to me, I just wanted to make him feel like he'd done the right thing and make sure he made the most. He goes, how about 40? I was like, I couldn't turn him down. I'm like, he's offering a fair wage. So, here it is, $40, And I was sitting here thinking about this. It's such a little amount of money for an American. But this is enough to feed some people for months. And this brings me to the main point of my video, which isn't really just recycling in America, but rather our ignorance to what's going on out there. And I wanted to make a video about this last year. This is something I have wanted to talk about for like a year and a half, but I just, for some reason, never got around to it. China stopped accepting U.S. recycling about 2 years ago, and most Americans aren't aware of this. Before this, most of our packaged up plastics were sent over to China for remanufacturing into clothing, whatever it might be. Americans are so fucking lazy, which is to kind of bring the last video into this one, as to the way that we're willing to recycle, that they stopped accepting it because there was too much crap in there. Because people were cheating, throwing in dirty containers, and they were just like, we're done with it. We only want the very best of the best recycling because it's more work than it's worth for them to recycle. And the reason I say it's American, because in Japan, they have a system like this where people are very, very particular. I mean, they break it down into like 7 or 8, 10 different things, and each different item gets recycled a certain way, and the people are very adamant about it. They want to do it right because they have no choice. They know that their environment will get polluted. Their island is small if they don't do it right. But in America, we could just throw everything out in the Badlands, I mean, we were intercepting China's waste. We get shipping containers full of Chinese garbage, and we actually ship it out east from here where I live in the Dalles, and they bury it. I don't know if they're still doing it or to what extent. But at the same time, U.S. is packaging up all the recycling, shipping it to China. China stopped accepting it. All of the recycling backed up at the ports. And then all of it got pushed back to the dump. And so all of those things that you spend all the time rinsing out and cleaning and properly sorting, a huge majority of them just get fucking dumped in the landfill. And the reason I'm saying this isn't to just say, well, don't bother recycling, because I still recycle. But you start asking yourself, okay, I've got an empty pop bottle. Yeah, hell, I'll recycle that, of course. Oh, I've got an empty peanut butter jar. Ugh. Or an old thing of sour cream. Do I want to really clean that out to recycle it, or do I just want to throw it in the garbage? And I know it's trivial, but it's not in the big picture. Like they say, think globally, act locally. Everybody has to do their little part. I'm not saying that we as individuals are the ones that are polluting the planet, because that's nonsense. The corporations put a hell of a lot more into it than we do. But we want to do our part. And so when you find out you're recycling and all of it's just getting thrown in the trash, it's kind of lame, kind of devastating. And you're like, well, fuck it. I wouldn't say devastating, but it's kind of a letdown. So I wanted to make people aware of that, not to say don't recycle, or to say it's not worth your time to care, but to say let's think of another way. I would like to say that off the top of my head right now, what comes to mind is Dave Hackens. And I think it's Dave Hackens, Hakkens, or Haakens. And I'll look it up and I'll try to put it in the description. Dave Hackens is a guy from, I believe, Sweden, somewhere over in Europe. I don't recall. I watched a lot of his stuff about a year ago. and I was really into figuring out a way to reuse plastic. And he has devised a machine over the past couple of years where he goes to other countries, shows them how to grind up their own plastic and turn them into usable materials. Everything from ladders to building materials and bricks. And it was great because when I looked that up, I was actually inspired to do that myself. I was looking for a way to make bricks out of plastic. I'm like, so you could send it to the landfill and it'll sit there for 1,000,000 years. Maybe not 1,000 years. It doesn't matter how long it is. The point is, if you can take all your plastic that would be dumped in a landfill, grind it up, and turn it into a usable brick-sized material that could be used to build affordable housing, or that could be used for insulation. There are so many things that we could possibly use these things for, that if we don't start doing it now, I don't know, humanity might not even live long enough to give a shit. I mean, everything seems to be falling apart right now. The cogs in the wheel are getting snapped and the gears are getting jammed and everything's just falling apart because not geopolitically, financially in the world, the way, population-wise, the way that we go about business as usual, but also how we treat one another as countries, as entire nations. It's just disgusting. Because when the U.S. wasn't able to send their garbage to China anymore, we started sending it to Malaysia and these other countries. And they have, seriously, like, piles and piles of these things backed up in their ports that they didn't ask for. And there are nations that their entire financial means are based on recycling plastic for barely enough money to feed their family. I mean, barely, if that. And it's just disgusting. Globalization is something that years ago, maybe a decade ago, when I heard the term and really thought about what it meant, I thought, well, this allows countries to share their commodities with other countries. It allows free trade. This might be a good thing. Now I understand why globalization is a horrible thing. It's something that I was ignorant of, and I'm willing to admit that. Local communities get devastated when we don't take care of our own bullshit. That means we have to grow our own food, as I said in the previous video, but we also have to be able to recycle our own garbage. And if it's out of sight, out of mind, we're going to continue to abuse other people, marginalized nations that are willing to take our bullshit garbage and burn it in these fields. And if you think that that's going to solve our problem, you're dead wrong. And I put the responsibility not on you as the consumer, but on the corporations that are shamefully wasting away mountains of resources, in order to make a few bucks. So, all in all, my belief, long term, is that the earth will remedy itself. I don't believe humans will really have to interject their thoughts very much because the earth takes care of its own, I know a lot of people don't believe the earth is conscious or an organism, and that's fine. I respect that, and I hope you respect the view that I do. And I think that the way we view time, we think, well, why isn't the earth taking care of itself now? Well, it is. I mean, look at what's happening with the Wuhan virus right now. It's scaring the shit out of people, not because it's particularly dangerous to us, but because we know that something like that could happen tomorrow where it had an 80% mortality rate and we're all gone. Or a solar flare. It's one of those kicks in the ass that says we better take care of our own shit or we're going to get left behind by the earth itself. And that's pretty messed up when you think about it. So, hopefully we have a little more respect for the earth and one another. It sounds like some hippie shit, and maybe it is, but maybe the hippies had it figured out, right? I know that everybody says, well, get a degree, fuck the hippies, business as usual, you've got to work for your 401k and retire at 65. Just like, what a stupid idea of reality. It's almost like a religion, the way the Western people live their lives. The idea that you really retire at 65 and collect a pension and then that's what life's all about, and then you die. Great, There's more to it than that. We want to take care of each other. We want to take care of our world. We know that it's important. We feel it in our hearts. And if we deny that, then we're just denying ourselves. So those are my thoughts. And thanks for listening. Leave a comment or I'll kick your ass. Because I'm a very violent person. I tend to lash out at anybody who doesn't leave comments. I don't know what else to say. Thanks for being there. Thanks for listening. Thanks to all my subscribers, and I'm glad to have a voice that I can speak to you and ears that will listen. So, be well. Take care of each other. And think about recycling a little bit. Something to consider. Peace.